Why are we still hearing cases, and this has shadows of the PPE all over again, why are we still hearing cases of people being in quarantine and not being tested when they said they were going to be?
And I think I probably would have, answered at least some of the context in that first part of our interview, Mike, that, again, the most important part is the 14 days. Second, of course, we had a protocol in place, particularly formally, from the first week of June, that 2 tests should be happening in quarantine.
And they weren't.
That is now what is underway.
But that's what I'm asking. There was a bloke on the news last night, a guy called Todd Elam. He hasn't been tested yet at all.
But nor has he been released, and as I understand...
but he's gone past day 3, and you test on day 3 and 12, and he hasn't been.
Day 3 and day 12, and in his case, as I understand, is quite particular. So, look, I'm not going to argue that what's happened in his particular case amongst the 4,272 we happen to have in quarantine right now has been perfect. But the protocol is, yes, day 3 and day 12.
So are we going to hear this week large numbers of people in quarantine who are saying they're not being tested on day 3 and day 12?
No, we shouldn't be. It might be that you have the odd case that's day 4 and day 13. But the important point is that no one is being released without a test. People are required to be negative before they're released, and they are doing 14 days. Yesterday, we had 5,950 tests, Mike. So rigorous testing is going on across the country.
What about the woman who was moved on Friday, having been in isolation for 3 days, flown to Christchurch alongside 150 other people in different stages of isolation from a number of different hotels? Again,
protocols there require, and this is links to the first question you've asked about a gentleman in his test who wasn't moved because he wasn't tested. So people being put into other facilities are required to be tested first before they're relocated. So again, Mike, 4,272 people in quarantine. So a large number, double what we've had since last month. We are using facilities in different parts of the country, very tight protocols around moving people. They cannot be on flights with anyone outside isolation and quarantine. They are being required to be tested. It is all very rigorous. Individuals, when we move them, we have to be very strict about
When
that.
you say it's all very rigorous, it hasn't been rigorous, and we now know it's not been rigorous. And the same way that the PPE, which was on a war footing, and there was plenty of it, and it was being distributed, we now know wasn't the case. You've got a major credibility issue around what you say and what actually happens.
Well, again, I'm going to dispute that, Mike. And again, also what I would point out is that we are not the only country who are putting in place protocols like this. Many other countries, however, just allow people to self-isolate at home.
It's got nothing to do with anything. We've got our own program to run. What you're telling us happens doesn't happen. We found that out last week.
Oh, look, and Mike, I am, of course, accepting that what happened last week was not in accordance with the very strict protocol that was put in place. It was not. Health will not argue that. I will not argue that. It is why we have put in place someone completely new to oversee testing, the entire process, and exit criteria, and that is Air Commodore Webb from the Defence Force. It's why we have doubled staff at all of our facilities.
But that seems to be the way your government runs, though, doesn't it? It seems to be the way your government runs. You tell us something's happening until it's proven it's not happening, then you appoint somebody else to fix what wasn't happening in the first place. Happened with the PPE, happened with the testing in quarantine.
I do not accept that, and I will bring you back to this point, Mike.
But you can't not accept it. It's true. It's a fact.
Mike, we have had over 20,000 people go through quarantine. We have not one case of an individual from quarantine who has passed on COVID to anyone else.
You don't know that.
Outside.
You don't know that because they left the hotels untested.
Mike, yes, we do.
You don't.
Yes, we do.
You don't.
Yes, we do.
You do not. They left the hotels untested.
Mike, 20,000 people have come through. We've continued to have rigorous testing across the country.
Tell me how many people left the hotel untested. You can't. Mike, you've already said you can't. Therefore, you can't tell me that they haven't left the hotel untested. Therefore, you don't know.
Yes, we can know. Because
how do you know?
Because we've had community testing all the way through this as well, Mike.
It doesn't mean anything. If you only test, community testing only tests the people you test. It doesn't test the people you don't test.
Clearly, if I can't make a statement about what's happened with the 20,000 people in the wider community testing alongside that, and you're not going to accept it, that is for you, Mike. But the point I make is that all the way through this, for the last, since March, We have had a quarantine process that has put 20,000 people through.
It doesn't matter how many people have gone through. The question is how many people have left untested. You don't know the answer to that. Because you don't know the answer to that, you don't know how many people are out in the community.
I've made my point. You continue to make yours.
The Ministry of Health had no idea how much personal protective equipment it had, how much it needed, what had expired, how it should be distributed. That's the Auditor General. You say what?
Look, I've seen the Auditor General's recommendations as well, and that wasn't my interpretation of what he said.
Is he well? No, that's a quote from his report. That's what he said.
They have made 10 recommendations, all of which are now being followed up. One of the issues I think we should we absolutely accept, Mike, is the distribution across DHBs was not what it needed to be.
But you said it did.
So here we had national.
You said you're on a war footing, and it was all fine.
No. I think obviously that just suggests to me, Mike, you didn't tune into my 1 o'clock presses. No, there was absolute acceptance that there were issues with distribution, and that's why we centralised it. So no one made that argument at all.
So if I can find a piece of audio that has you saying that there is no distribution problem, and that you've got plenty of PPE, and we're on a war footing and there's no need to complain, then you will admit you're wrong.
You will absolutely find me conceding the point that we had issues with the distribution. Absolutely. That was quite clear. What we were arguing, of course, all the way through is that we had national stores, but then getting that out through the DHBs and then into the community services who need them was not what it needed to be. And yes, absolutely, we acknowledge that.
Just quickly, is it acceptable to spend in excess of $500,000 on a slide and some wood in the Parliament grounds?
Oh, you're talking about again, Mike, I'm happy to answer questions on everything and anything, but I'm going to be really clear on that one. The Speaker is in charge of decisions made around the building at Parliament.
Well, he's your Speaker.
One of the things I happily do not have a role and responsibility over is Parliament's facilities. That is a neutral person in the Speaker that takes care of that.
Appreciate your time. Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister.